23-year-old Zara Mitchell thought she was just treating herself to a weekend getaway at the luxurious Ocean View Grand Resort in Miami Beach. She had no idea that in less than 6 minutes, her father would be making a phone call that would change everything about this 5-star establishment forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The Florida sun blazed overhead as Zara Mitchell pulled her rental car into the circular driveway of the Ocean View Grand Resort. Palm trees swayed gently in the ocean breeze, and the pristine white facade of the hotel gleamed against the azure sky. After months of working double shifts as a pediatric nurse at Atlanta General Hospital, she had finally saved enough for this solo vacation, 3 days of pure relaxation at one of Miami Beach's most exclusive resorts. Zara stepped out of her car, smoothing down her yellow sundress and adjusting her oversized sunglasses. The valet, a young man with a practiced smile, approached immediately. "Welcome to Ocean View Grand, miss. Checking in?" "Yes, Zara Mitchell. I have a reservation for the Ocean View suite." As she handed over her keys, Zara couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. At 23, she had worked incredibly hard to afford this moment. Between her nursing job and weekend shifts at a local clinic, she had sacrificed countless social events and shopping trips to save for this getaway. Her best friend Maya had insisted she deserved it after the grueling year she'd had in the ICU. The lobby was everything the website had promised: marble floors that gleamed like mirrors, crystal chandeliers that cast rainbow patterns on the walls, and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered breathtaking views of the Atlantic Ocean. Zara approached the front desk where a blonde woman in her 40s, whose name tag read Patricia, looked up with a professional smile. "Good afternoon. I'm checking in under Mitchell." Patricia's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Ah, yes, Ms. Mitchell. 3 nights in our Ocean View suite. You'll love it. We've just renovated all the suites on the 20th floor." She handed over the keycards with a flourish. "The pool area is open until sunset, and our spa services are available by appointment. Is there anything else I can help you with today?" "Actually, yes. I noticed online that you have a rooftop infinity pool. That's mainly why I chose this resort." "Oh, you'll absolutely love it. Take the elevator to the 25th floor. It's our crown jewel. The views are spectacular, especially at sunset." 30 minutes later, Zara had unpacked her belongings and changed into her favorite bikini, a vibrant turquoise number that complemented her dark skin beautifully. She grabbed her beach bag, loaded with sunscreen, a novel she'd been dying to read, and her phone, then headed to the elevator. The 25th floor opened to reveal paradise. The infinity pool seemed to merge seamlessly with the ocean horizon, creating an illusion of endless blue. Comfortable lounge chairs were arranged around the deck, most of them empty despite the perfect weather. Only a handful of other guests were present: an elderly couple reading newspapers under an umbrella, and 2 women in their 30s chatting quietly near the pool bar. Zara selected a prime spot near the pool's edge and began setting up her space. She spread out her towel, applied sunscreen methodically, and was just about to slip into the crystal-clear water when a shadow fell across her path. "Excuse me, miss." She looked up to see a man in his 50s wearing a resort polo shirt and khakis. His name tag identified him as Derek Williams, pool manager. His expression was stern, and there was something in his tone that immediately put Zara on edge. "Yes? I'm going to need to see your room key and identification." Zara blinked, confused. "My room key? Why?" "We need to verify that you're actually a guest at this resort." The words hit Zara like a physical blow. She glanced around the pool area, noting that Derek hadn't approached any of the other guests with similar requests. The elderly couple continued reading their newspapers undisturbed, and the 2 women by the bar were laughing at something on one of their phones, completely unbothered by any staff requests for verification. Of course I'm a guest. I just checked in 30 minutes ago. Nevertheless, I need to see your credentials." Zara's hands trembled slightly as she reached into her beach bag. The humiliation was immediate and searing. Other guests were beginning to notice the commotion, their conversations dying down as they turned to stare. She produced her room key and driver's license, handing them to Derek with as much dignity as she could muster. Derek examined both items with exaggerated thoroughness, holding them up to the light as if checking for forgeries. "These appear to be in order," he said finally, as if granting her some great favor. "Of course they're in order," Zara replied, her voice steady despite the anger building in her chest. "I'm a paying guest at this resort." Quote, "Well, now that we've established that," Derek continued, his tone condescending, "I need to inform you of some additional pool rules." "Additional rules?" "This is our VIP pool area. There are certain standards that need to be maintained." Zara felt her stomach drop. "What kind of standards?" "Well, for instance, we ask that guests dress appropriately. Some swimwear can be inappropriate for our clientele." Zara looked down at her bikini, a modest two-piece that she'd purchased from a department store. There was nothing inappropriate about it by any reasonable standard. In fact, it was more conservative than what the two women by the bar were wearing. "Are you saying there's something wrong with my swimsuit?" "I'm simply explaining our policies. We also ask that guests maintain quiet, respectful behavior in this area. No loud music, no boisterous activities." "I haven't even entered the pool yet, and I certainly wasn't being loud." Derek's expression hardened. "Are you arguing with resort policy, miss?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Zara realized that this wasn't really about pool rules or dress codes or noise levels. This was about something else entirely, something that made her skin crawl and her heart race with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "No," she said quietly, "I'm not arguing." "Good. Now, I think it might be best if you used the main pool on the third floor instead. It's more suitable for guests like yourself." The words "guests like yourself" echoed in Zara's mind. She looked around the nearly empty rooftop pool, at the other guests who had been allowed to enjoy the space without question, without verification, without being told they belonged somewhere else. "The main pool? Yes, it's quite nice, very popular with families, and, well, it's just more appropriate." Zara's nursing training had taught her to remain calm under pressure, to think clearly in crisis situations. But this wasn't a medical emergency. This was something far more insidious and personal. She felt a familiar knot forming in her stomach, the same feeling she'd experienced countless times throughout her life when she was made to feel like she didn't belong somewhere. "I specifically booked the Ocean View suite because of this pool," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Derek shrugged. "Well, sometimes expectations don't match reality. I'm sure you'll find the main pool perfectly adequate." Adequate. The word stung. Zara had saved for months to afford this place, had dreamed of lounging by this exact pool while reading her book and watching the sunset over the ocean. She had worked herself to exhaustion, caring for sick children, missing family gatherings and social events, all so she could have this one perfect weekend. "I'd like to speak to your supervisor," she said. Derek's laugh was cold. "I am the supervisor for this area, miss. My decision is final." Zara felt tears threatening to spill over, but she refused to give Derek the satisfaction of seeing her cry. Instead, she began slowly packing her belongings back into her beach bag. Her hands shook as she folded her towel, and she could feel the stares of the other guests burning into her back. As she stood to leave, Derek's voice followed her. "I hope you enjoy the rest of your stay at Ocean View Grand." The elevator ride down felt eternal. Zara stared at her reflection in the polished steel doors, seeing a young woman who had done everything right. Worked hard, saved money, treated others with respect, only to be told she didn't belong in a space she had every right to occupy. Back in her room, Zara sat on the edge of the king-sized bed and stared out at the ocean view she had paid extra for. The irony wasn't lost on her. She could see the very pool she'd been banned from through her window, watch other guests enjoy the amenities she was being denied. She picked up her phone, hesitating for a moment before scrolling to her father's contact. Marcus Mitchell had always been her protector, her biggest supporter, but she hated burdening him with problems she felt she should be able to handle herself. At 23, she was supposed to be independent, capable of fighting her own battles. But as she sat in that expensive hotel room, feeling smaller than she had in years, Zara realized that some battles were too big to fight alone. The phone rang twice before her father's familiar voice came through the speaker. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Zara, sweetheart, how's the fancy resort? Are you getting the royal treatment you deserve?" The concern in his voice when she didn't immediately respond was immediate. "Baby girl, what's wrong?" "Dad, I'm fine. It's just—" Zara's voice cracked despite her best efforts to sound composed. "You're not fine. I can hear it in your voice. What happened?" Marcus Mitchell had an uncanny ability to read his daughter's emotions, even through a phone call. As the CEO of Mitchell Holdings, a private equity firm that managed over $2 billion in assets, he was used to people trying to deceive him. But with Zara, he never had to guess. Her pain was his pain, and right now she was hurting. "There was an incident at the pool," Zara began, then found herself recounting the entire humiliating encounter with Derek Williams. She tried to keep her voice steady, but by the time she finished describing how she'd been essentially banned from the rooftop pool, tears were streaming down her cheeks. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Zara knew that silence. It was the calm before the storm, the moment when her father's brilliant mind shifted into a gear that had made him one of the most formidable businessmen on the East Coast. "What's the name of this resort again?" Marcus's voice was eerily calm. "Ocean View Grand Resort. Dad, please don't do anything crazy. I just needed to talk to someone." "Zara, baby girl, look at me through this phone. Do you hear me?" "Yes, Dad. You are my daughter. You are a pediatric nurse who saves children's lives every single day. You worked 16-hour shifts during the pandemic when other people were hiding in their houses. You graduated summa cum laude from nursing school while working part-time to pay your own tuition. You are brilliant, accomplished, and worthy of respect everywhere you go. Do you understand me?" Fresh tears spilled over, but these were different. Not tears of humiliation, but of gratitude for having a father who saw her worth so clearly. "I understand." "Good. Now I want you to order room service, take a long bath, and try to enjoy your evening. Can you do that for me?" "Yes, but Dad." "No buts. I love you, sweetheart. Everything's going to be okay." After they hung up, Zara did exactly as her father suggested. She ordered an elaborate dinner from room service, lobster tail with garlic butter, truffle pasta, and a slice of key lime pie that was almost too beautiful to eat. She ran a hot bath with the complimentary lavender bath salts and tried to lose herself in the novel she'd brought. But her mind kept wandering back to Derek Williams and the way he'd looked at her, as if she were an intruder in a space where she didn't belong. She'd encountered racism before, of course. Subtle microaggressions, suspicious looks in department stores, assumptions about her intelligence or qualifications. But this had been so blatant, so humiliating, and so public. Meanwhile, 3 states away in his corner office overlooking downtown Atlanta, Marcus Mitchell was making a series of phone calls that would have far-reaching consequences. His first call was to his head of research, Jennifer Chen, who specialized in corporate due diligence for potential acquisitions. "Jenny, I need everything you can find on a company called Ocean View Grand Resort in Miami Beach. I need ownership structure, financial statements, debt obligations, management hierarchy, recent reviews, legal issues, everything. And I need it in 2 hours." 2 hours? Marcus, that's barely enough time to... 2 hours, Jenny. This is personal. His second call was to his longtime friend and attorney, Robert Sterling, who specialized in corporate law and had helped Marcus navigate dozens of complex business deals over the years. "Rob, hypothetically speaking, if someone wanted to acquire a mid-sized resort operation very quickly, like within a week, what would that process look like?" "That depends on a lot of factors. Size of the operation, current ownership structure, whether they're publicly traded. Marcus, what are you planning?" "Just exploring options. Can you clear your schedule for the next few days?" "For you, always." "But Marcus, quick acquisitions in the hospitality sector can be tricky. There are regulatory considerations, existing contracts with vendors and employees, potential environmental issues." "Rob, I didn't ask about the challenges. I asked about the process." By the time Zara was falling asleep in her plush resort bed, Marcus had assembled a team of 12 people, lawyers, accountants, real estate specialists, and hospitality industry experts. They would work through the night to compile a comprehensive profile of Ocean View Grand Resort and develop multiple strategies for what Marcus was already thinking of as Project Zara. Jennifer Chen's team worked with military precision. Within 90 minutes, they had uncovered some fascinating information about Ocean View Grand Resort. The property was owned by Sunshine Hospitality Group, a family-owned company run by brothers Paul and Thomas Brennan. The resort had been in their family for 37 years, but recent financial reports showed troubling trends. Occupancy rates had declined steadily over the past 3 years, from 91% to 73%. Online reviews revealed a pattern of complaints about outdated amenities, poor customer service, and what several guests diplomatically referred to as unwelcoming staff attitudes. More concerning were the resort's debt obligations. They owed nearly $42 million to various creditors, with balloon payments coming due in 8 months. The property itself was valued at approximately $85 million, but the business was hemorrhaging money. Their profit margins had shrunk to less than 3%, well below industry standards for luxury resorts. Marcus studied the financial reports spread across his conference table. His team had worked through the night, and now, at 6 in the morning, he had a complete picture of Ocean View Grand Resort's vulnerabilities. So they're cash poor but property rich, he summarized to his assembled team. Classic family business that's failed to adapt to changing market conditions. Exactly, confirms Sarah Rodriguez, his lead financial analyst. They're also heavily leveraged. If we approached them with the right offer, cash, quick closing, assumption of certain debts, they might be very motivated to sell. What about the staff situation? I noticed some concerning patterns in the online reviews. That's interesting you mention that, said David Park, his hospitality consultant. I've been analyzing customer feedback data, and there are definitely recurring themes about discriminatory treatment. Nothing that's resulted in major lawsuits yet, but enough complaints to suggest systemic issues rather than isolated incidents. Marcus leaned back in his leather chair, his mind racing through possibilities. He'd built his fortune by identifying undervalued assets and transforming them into profitable enterprises. But this wasn't about profit. This was about justice for his daughter and accountability for Derek Williams. Rob, if we acquired this property, what would our options be regarding current management and staff? Quote, Robert Sterling consulted his legal notes. As new owners, you'd have broad discretion to restructure management, implement new policies, and yes, terminate employees for cause. As long as you document performance issues and follow proper procedures, you'd be well within your rights. And how quickly could we move on this? If the current owners are motivated sellers, and if you're willing to pay above market value, potentially very quickly, maybe a week to 10 days for due diligence and closing. Marcus smiled for the first time since his daughter's phone call. It wasn't a pleasant smile. It was the expression he wore when he'd identified a target and was preparing to strike. Jenny, I want you to have someone physically visit the resort today, pose as a potential investor interested in the hospitality industry. I want detailed observations about the property, the staff, the operational systems, everything. Consider it done. Sarah, start running financial projections for acquisition and renovation costs. I want to know exactly what it would take to transform this place into a truly world-class operation. What's our budget ceiling? Marcus thought about his daughter's tears, about the humiliation in her voice, about Derek Williams' smug satisfaction as he'd forced her to leave the pool area. Whatever it takes. By mid-morning, Marcus had initiated preliminary contact with Sunshine Hospitality Group through intermediaries. He didn't want the Brennan brothers to know who was interested in their property. Not yet. The initial response was exactly what his team had predicted. The owners were very interested in discussing a potential sale. Meanwhile, Zara was attempting to salvage her vacation. She'd spent the morning at the main pool on the 3rd floor, which was perfectly nice but lacked the stunning ocean views and sophisticated atmosphere of the rooftop infinity pool. The clientele was different too, mostly families with young children, making it nearly impossible to read her book in peace. Around noon, she decided to try the resort's spa, hoping a massage might help her forget about yesterday's incident. The spa receptionist, a kind woman named Maria, was warm and professional, and for the first time since arriving, Zara felt genuinely welcome somewhere in the resort. "First time with us?" Maria asked, as she led Zara to the relaxation lounge. "Yes, I'm staying for the weekend." "Wonderful! You picked a great time. It's been so peaceful lately. Though I have to say, we've had some management changes recently that have, well, let's just say the atmosphere around here has been a bit tense." Zara's curiosity was piqued. "Management changes?" Maria glanced around conspiratorially. "The pool manager, Derek Williams? He's been really cracking down on everything lately, making up rules that don't exist, being rude to guests. Honestly, a lot of us are surprised he still has a job. We've had several guest complaints about him just this month. This revelation was both validating and infuriating. Zara wasn't Derek's first victim. She was just the latest in what appeared to be a pattern of problematic behavior. Has anyone reported these issues to upper management? We've tried, but Derek's been with the resort for almost 15 years. The owners trust him, and he's very good at explaining away complaints. After her massage, Zara returned to her room, feeling physically relaxed but emotionally unsettled. She called her father to check in, careful not to mention her conversation with Maria. She didn't want to fuel whatever plans he might be formulating. "How was your spa day, baby girl?" "It was lovely. The massage therapist was wonderful." "Good. I'm glad you're taking care of yourself." "Are you planning to try the pool again today?" "I think I'll stick to the main pool. It's fine, really." But Marcus could hear the defeat in her voice, the way she'd given up on something she'd been looking forward to. It broke his heart and strengthened his resolve simultaneously. "Zara, I want you to promise me something." "What?" "Tomorrow morning I want you to go back to that rooftop pool, wear whatever you want, bring your book, and enjoy yourself. Can you do that for me?" "Dad, I really don't want another confrontation." "Trust me, sweetheart. Just this once. Trust your old man." That evening, as Zara enjoyed a quiet dinner at the resort's beachside restaurant, Marcus was finalizing the details of an acquisition offer that would shock the Brennan brothers. His team had worked around the clock to structure a deal that would be impossible to refuse. $92 million cash, closing within 5 business days, with Marcus assuming responsibility for the resort's outstanding debts. It was significantly above market value, but Marcus wasn't thinking like a typical investor. He was thinking like a father who'd heard his daughter cry tears of humiliation and degradation. The offer would be presented first thing Monday morning. By Tuesday, if everything went according to plan, Marcus Mitchell would own every square inch of Ocean View Grand Resort. And Derek Williams would be looking for a new job. Monday morning arrived with the kind of perfect weather that made Miami Beach famous: endless blue skies, gentle ocean breezes, and temperatures hovering at a comfortable 78 degrees. Zara woke up feeling refreshed for the first time since her arrival, though she couldn't quite shake the lingering anxiety about her father's mysterious confidence from their phone call. She decided to start her day with breakfast at the resort's oceanfront cafe, a charming spot where tables were arranged under white umbrellas just steps from the sand. The hostess, a young woman named Carmen, seated her at a prime table with unobstructed ocean views. "First time in Miami?" Carmen asked as she poured fresh orange juice into Zara's glass. "Yes, and it's been eventful." Carmen lowered her voice conspiratorially. "You know, I heard about what happened at the rooftop pool on Saturday. Derek Williams, right?" Zara nearly choked on her juice. "Word travels fast around here." "Honey, this place is like a small town. Nothing stays secret for long. And between you and me, Derek's been on a power trip lately. We've all been walking on eggshells around him." "Have other guests complained about him?" "More than you'd think. Last month, he made a Latino family prove they were staying in the presidential suite before he'd let them use the cabanas. The month before that, he questioned whether an Asian businessman's Rolex was authentic before allowing him into the VIP lounge. It's getting ridiculous." This pattern of behavior was exactly what Marcus's team had discovered in their research, but hearing it confirmed by resort staff made Zara's stomach turn. She wasn't an isolated victim. She was part of a systematic problem that had been festering at Ocean View Grand for months. Why doesn't anyone stop him? Carmen glanced around nervously. The Brennan brothers. They own this place. They're not exactly hands-on managers. They spend most of their time at their other properties in the Caribbean. Derek basically runs things here, and he's convinced them that his, quote, high standards are what keep this place exclusive. Quote, 20 minutes away, those same Brennan brothers were sitting in their Miami office, staring at an acquisition offer that made their heads spin. Paul Brennan, the older brother at 54, read the terms aloud for the third time. $92 million, cash, 5-day closing, buyer assumes all outstanding debt obligations. Thomas Brennan, 2 years younger and significantly more nervous by nature, paced behind his brother's desk. It has to be a mistake. The property's only worth $85 million on a good day, and with our occupancy issues. It's not a mistake, Tommy. Look at these financial statements they've included. This Mitchell Holdings firm manages over $2 billion in assets. They can afford to overpay if they want to. But why would they want to? What do they know that we don't? Paul studied the offer documents again. The legal language was airtight, drafted by expensive attorneys who clearly knew their business. The proposed timeline was aggressive but not impossible if both parties were motivated. Maybe they see potential we've been missing. Maybe they have plans for redevelopment that we haven't considered. Or maybe they're just rich enough to not care about overpaying, Thomas suggested hopefully. Either way, this solves our cash flow problems instantly. We can pay off the balloon payments, clear our credit lines, and still walk away with enough money to invest in the Bermuda property. Thomas stopped pacing. You think we should accept? I think we'd be crazy not to at least explore it. The closing timeline is tight, but if they can really deliver $92 million in cash. Paul reached for his phone. I'm calling our attorney. If this Marcus Mitchell wants to buy our resort, let's find out how serious he is. Back at the resort, Zara decided to spend her afternoon exploring Miami Beach rather than dealing with any more potential confrontations at the hotel. She visited the Art Deco district, browsed through Lincoln Road's boutiques, and enjoyed a late lunch at a Cuban restaurant where the staff treated her like family. As the sun began to set, she found herself back at Ocean View Grand, standing in front of the elevator that would take her to the 25th floor. Her father's words echoed in her mind. Tomorrow morning, I want you to go back to that rooftop pool. She pressed the up button. The rooftop pool area was nearly empty when she arrived, just as it had been on Saturday. The same elderly couple occupied their usual spot under an umbrella, and a single businessman was swimming laps in the far lane. Zara chose a different chair this time, one closer to the pool bar and farther from where Derek had confronted her. She had just settled in with her book when familiar footsteps approached. Derek Williams appeared beside her chair, wearing the same khakis and resort polo, the same expression of manufactured authority. I thought we discussed this on Saturday, miss. Zara looked up slowly, her father's voice still ringing in her ears. We discussed your opinion about where I should spend my time. I decided to disregard that opinion. Derek's face flushed red. Excuse me. I'm a paying guest at this resort. I have every right to use these facilities. Now listen here. No, you listen. Zara stood up, facing Derek directly. I've been nothing but polite and respectful since I arrived here. I've followed every actual rule of this resort. What you're doing has nothing to do with dress codes or noise policies, and we both know it. Are you accusing me of something? I'm stating facts. You didn't check anyone else's room key on Saturday. You didn't lecture anyone else about dress codes or behavior. You singled me out for reasons that have nothing to do with resort policy. Derek's jaw tightened. I think you need to leave, now. I think you need to call your supervisor, because I'm not going anywhere. The standoff lasted nearly 30 seconds, with other guests beginning to notice the commotion. Finally, Derek pulled out his radio. Security to the rooftop pool. We have a situation. Within minutes, 2 security guards arrived. Both young men who looked uncomfortable with whatever they'd been asked to do. Derek gestured dramatically toward Zara. This guest is refusing to comply with pool policies and being disruptive. One of the guards, whose name tag read Miguel, looked between Derek and Zara with obvious confusion. What policy is she violating? She's explained the rules multiple times and continues to argue. Miguel turned to Zara. Ma'am, have you been causing any disturbances? I've been sitting here reading my book for less than 10 minutes. The second guard, James, looked equally puzzled. Derek, what specific rule has she broken? Derek's face grew redder. Are you questioning my authority? We're just trying to understand the situation, Miguel replied diplomatically. The situation is that I am the pool manager, and I'm telling you to escort this guest away from this area. At that moment, Zara's phone rang. The caller ID showed her father's number. Excuse me, she said to the assembled group. I need to take this call. Dad! Zara, sweetheart, are you at the rooftop pool? Yes, but there's a situation. Perfect timing. I need you to put me on speakerphone. Dad, I don't think. Trust me, baby girl. Speakerphone. Right now. With trembling fingers, Zara switched to speaker mode. Her father's voice carried clearly across the pool deck. Is Derek Williams present? Derek's eyes widened in surprise. Who is this? Mr. Williams, my name is Marcus Mitchell. I believe you've met my daughter. Your daughter was violating resort policies. Mr. Williams, I'm going to stop you right there. I'm currently sitting in a conference room with my attorneys, and I have some very interesting information about your employment history at Ocean View Grand Resort. Derek's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm talking about the 17 guest complaints filed against you in the past 6 months. I'm talking about the discrimination lawsuit that the resort settled quietly last year. A lawsuit that specifically named you as a defendant. I'm talking about your pattern of targeting guests of color for policy violations that somehow never apply to white guests. The pool deck had gone completely silent. Even the elderly couple had stopped reading their newspapers to listen. You can't prove any of that, Derek stammered. Actually, Mr. Williams, I can prove all of it. You see, as of approximately 30 minutes ago, I am the new owner of Ocean View Grand Resort. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Derek's mouth opened and closed wordlessly, while the security guards exchanged shocked glances. You're lying, Derek finally managed. Miguel and James. Those are your names, correct, gentlemen? You can verify this information by calling the front desk and asking for Patricia. She should have received notification of the ownership transfer about 15 minutes ago. Miguel hesitantly reached for his radio. Front desk, this is Miguel. Can you confirm, is there any information about a change in resort ownership? Patricia's voice crackled through the radio, sounding flustered. Miguel, where are you? I need all department heads in the lobby immediately. We've just received confirmation that the resort has been sold to Mitchell Holdings. The new owner is requesting an immediate meeting with senior staff. Derek Williams looked like he might faint. The businessman who had been swimming laps had stopped to listen, and even the elderly couple was openly staring now. Mr. Williams, Marcus's voice continued through the phone's speaker, you have exactly 60 seconds to apologize to my daughter and then remove yourself from this pool area. After that, you can report to the lobby for a conversation about your future with this organization. This is insane, Derek protested. You can't just buy a resort because... 50 seconds, Mr. Williams. The pool manager's composure finally cracked completely. His face contorted with a mixture of rage and panic as he realized the magnitude of what was happening. This is ridiculous. I've been with this company for 15 years. You can't just... 40 seconds. Derek looked around desperately, as if seeking support from the other guests or security guards, but Miguel and James had already stepped away from him, and the other guests were watching the scene unfold with fascination rather than sympathy. I apologize, Derek mumbled, barely audible. Louder, Mr. Williams, and look at my daughter when you speak. Derek's hands were visibly shaking now. I apologize, Ms. Mitchell. I made an error in judgment. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Now please report to the lobby. As Derek shuffled away like a defeated man, the pool deck erupted in whispered conversations. Zara sank back into her lounge chair, overwhelmed by what had just transpired. Dad, did you really just buy this entire resort? Marcus's laughter carried warmth and satisfaction. I told you everything was going to be okay, didn't I? The lobby of Ocean View Grand Resort had transformed into a scene of controlled chaos. Staff members from every department gathered in clusters, whispering urgently about the sudden ownership change. Patricia stood behind the front desk, fielding phone calls and trying to maintain an air of professionalism while clearly being overwhelmed by the situation. Derek Williams entered the lobby 20 minutes after his humiliating encounter at the pool, looking like a man walking to his own execution. His usually pristine resort polo was wrinkled, and sweat stains were visible under his arms despite the air conditioning. He approached Patricia's desk with hesitant steps. I was told to report here, he said quietly. Mr. Williams, Patricia replied, her tone noticeably cooler than usual. Please have a seat. Mr. Mitchell's representatives will be with you shortly. His representatives? I thought the new owner wanted to speak with me directly. Plans have changed. Before Derek could respond, the resort's main entrance doors opened to admit 3 people in expensive business attire. The leader was a tall woman with silver hair and commanding presence. This was Jennifer Chen, Marcus's head of research. Behind her walked Robert Sterling, the corporate attorney, and Sarah Rodriguez, the financial analyst. Jennifer surveyed the lobby with the calculating gaze of someone accustomed to evaluating business operations. Her eyes swept over the marble floors, the crystal chandeliers, the nervous staff members, and finally settled on Derek Williams. "Mr. Williams, I presume," she said, approaching him with purposeful strides. Derek stood awkwardly. "Yes, ma'am." "I'm Jennifer Chen, representing Mitchell Holdings. We need to have a conversation." She gestured toward a private dining room off the main lobby. Derek followed reluctantly, feeling the stares of his former colleagues as he passed. In the 24 hours since this nightmare began, he'd gone from being one of the most powerful people at the resort to feeling like a pariah. Meanwhile, upstairs in her ocean view suite, Zara was having a very different conversation with her father. "I still can't believe you actually bought this place," she said, settling into the plush armchair by her window. "Dad, this is insane even by your standards." Marcus's laughter was warm and satisfied. "Sweetheart, you know your old man doesn't do anything halfway. Besides, this wasn't just about Derek Williams, though he certainly accelerated the timeline." "What do you mean?" "My team's research revealed some troubling patterns at this resort. The discrimination you experienced wasn't isolated. It was systemic. Derek had been targeting guests of color for months, making up rules on the spot, creating hostile environments for people who had every right to be there." Zara felt a chill run down her spine. "How many other people went through what I did?" "Too many. And the previous owners either didn't know or didn't care enough to stop it. When I saw the financial records, I realized this place was hemorrhaging money partly because of reputation damage from incidents like yours." Quote, "So this is actually a sound business investment?" "It will be, once we implement some changes. The property itself is magnificent. Prime beachfront real estate, excellent bones, incredible potential. It just needed new management and a complete cultural overhaul." As father and daughter talked, Jennifer Chen was conducting what could only be described as the most uncomfortable job interview of Derek Williams' life. "Mr. Williams, let's start with Saturday's incident involving Ms. Mitchell," Jennifer began, consulting a thick folder of documents. "Can you walk me through your decision-making process?" Derek shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "I was enforcing resort policies." "Which policies, specifically?" "Well, the dress code." "I have a copy of the resort's official dress code here," Jennifer interrupted, sliding a document across the table. "Please point to the section that Ms. Mitchell violated." Derek stared at the paper, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. The dress code was standard for resort pools. No glass containers, no outside food or drink, modest swimwear required. Zara's bikini had clearly met all these requirements. "What about the identification verification policy?" he asked desperately. "There is no such policy. I've reviewed the entire employee handbook." Jennifer's voice remained professionally neutral, but her message was clear. "Mr. Williams, in the past 6 months, how many guests have you asked to show identification at the pool?" I don't keep exact records." "Let me help you. According to guest complaint records, you've requested identification from 17 guests. Would you like to guess what all 17 of those guests had in common?" Derek's face flushed red. He knew exactly what they had in common, and so did Jennifer Chen. "Furthermore," Jennifer continued, "we've discovered that the resort quietly settled a discrimination lawsuit last year for an undisclosed amount. A lawsuit that specifically named you as a defendant. Were you going to mention that?" "That was a misunderstanding." "Was the misunderstanding that you told a black family they couldn't use the cabanas because those areas are reserved for VIP guests, even though they were staying in the presidential suite?" Derek's shoulders sagged in defeat. "Look, I may have made some mistakes in judgment. Mr. Williams, let me be very clear about something. Mr. Mitchell didn't purchase this resort on a whim. He's a businessman who sees potential in undervalued assets. But what happened to his daughter wasn't a business calculation. It was personal. I understand that. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been systematically creating a hostile environment for guests of color, damaging this resort's reputation, and exposing the company to legal liability. That's not a mistake in judgment. That's a pattern of discriminatory behavior that ends today." While Derek Williams faced the consequences of his actions, the rest of the resort was buzzing with activity. Word of the ownership change had spread throughout the staff, and reactions were mixed. Some longtime employees were nervous about job security under new management. Others, particularly those who had witnessed Derek's behavior firsthand, were cautiously optimistic about change. Carmen, the hostess from the Oceanfront Cafe, was having lunch with Maria from the spa when they spotted Zara entering the restaurant. "That's her," Carmen whispered, "the new owner's daughter." Maria's eyes widened. She seemed so normal. I mean, her father just bought an entire resort because someone was rude to her. Can you imagine having that kind of protection? That kind of power? They watched as Zara was seated at the same oceanfront table she'd occupied that morning. She looked more relaxed now, but there was still something thoughtful and slightly overwhelmed in her expression. Should we say something to her? Maria wondered. Like what? Thanks for getting Derek fired. He's not fired yet, is he? Give it time. Their speculation proved accurate. After 90 minutes of what could generously be called a performance review, Derek Williams emerged from the private dining room looking like he'd aged 5 years. Jennifer Chen followed a few steps behind, her expression professionally neutral, but unmistakably satisfied. Derek walked directly to Patricia's desk, where several staff members had gathered to witness what they correctly anticipated would be his final moments as pool manager. "I need to clean out my office," he said quietly. Patricia nodded, her expression carefully neutral. "Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings." "How long do I have?" 30 minutes. As Derek made his walk of shame toward the elevator, conversations gradually resumed throughout the lobby. The message was clear. The Derek Williams era at Ocean View Grand Resort was officially over. Back in the private dining room, Jennifer Chen was briefing the resort's department heads about immediate changes under new ownership. First, effective immediately, all guest service policies will be reviewed and standardized, she announced to the assembled managers. Every staff member will undergo sensitivity training within the next 2 weeks. The head of housekeeping, a woman named Rosa who had worked at the resort for 12 years, raised her hand. "What about job security? Are you planning to replace existing staff?" Mr. Mitchell believes in rewarding good employees and removing problematic ones. If you've been doing your job well and treating all guests with respect, you have nothing to worry about. The food and beverage manager, James Peterson, looked relieved. "What about Derek's replacement?" "That position will be posted internally first. We believe in promoting from within when possible, provided candidates demonstrate the values we expect: professionalism, respect for all guests, and zero tolerance for discriminatory behavior." Miguel, one of the security guards who had witnessed Derek's final confrontation, spoke up. "Ma'am, many of us knew Derek's behavior was problematic, but we didn't feel like we had channels to report it effectively. That changes today. We're implementing an anonymous reporting system for any staff member who witnesses inappropriate behavior from colleagues or management. Your job is to ensure all guests feel welcome and respected, regardless of their race, religion, nationality, or any other factor." As the meeting concluded, staff members filed out with a mixture of relief and curiosity about what other changes might be coming. The resort that had operated under the same family ownership for 37 years was about to experience a complete transformation. That evening, Zara joined her father for dinner via video call, sitting on her suite's private balcony as the sun set over the Atlantic Ocean. "So Derek Williams is officially gone?" she asked, taking a sip of the champagne that room service had delivered compliments of the new management. "As of about an hour ago, my team is already conducting interviews for his replacement." "I have to ask, was buying this resort really just about what happened to me?" Marcus smiled, and Zara could see the pride in his eyes even through the phone screen. "Baby girl, what happened to you was the catalyst, but this is about something bigger. It's about making sure no other guest ever experiences what you did. It's about creating a place where everyone feels welcome and respected. And it doesn't hurt that you'll probably make money on the deal. The financial projections are very promising, yes. But honestly, Zara, even if this investment lost money, it would be worth it to see you sitting there enjoying that sunset without anyone questioning whether you belong." As night fell over Miami Beach, Zara reflected on the extraordinary turn her vacation had taken. What had started as a weekend of relaxation had become something much more significant. A lesson in standing up for what's right, the power of having someone who believes in your worth, and the reality that sometimes justice comes in the most unexpected forms. Tomorrow, she would check out of Ocean View Grand Resort as planned. But thanks to her father's dramatic intervention, she would be leaving as part of the Mitchell family legacy. owners of a property that would never again allow discrimination to flourish under its roof. 6 months after the dramatic events at Ocean View Grand Resort, the transformation was nothing short of remarkable. The property that had once been hemorrhaging money and reputation was now boasting a 96% occupancy rate and had earned a 5-star rating from the American Hospitality Association. Zara Mitchell stood on the familiar rooftop pool deck, but everything around her had changed. Where once there had been outdated furniture and an atmosphere of exclusivity, there was now modern comfort and genuine warmth. The infinity pool sparkled under the Miami sun, surrounded by guests of every background imaginable. Families from Brazil speaking Portuguese, elderly couples from Japan taking photos, young professionals from New York enjoying cocktails, and children of all ethnicities splashing happily in the shallow end. "Ms. Mitchell?" A voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see Miguel approaching, but he was no longer wearing a security uniform. Instead, he wore the navy blazer and gold name tag of a guest relations manager. "Miguel, how are you settling into your new role?" His smile was genuine and proud. "Better than I ever imagined. Thank you for recommending me for the promotion." After Derek Williams' termination, Miguel had been one of several internal candidates considered for leadership positions. His professionalism during that tense confrontation at the pool, combined with his 4 years of exemplary service, had made him an obvious choice for advancement. "You earned it through your own merit," Zara replied. "I just mentioned to the hiring committee that you handled a difficult situation with grace and integrity. Still, I want you to know how much things have changed around here. The diversity training program your father implemented, it's made such a difference. We've had 0 discrimination complaints in 6 months, and guest satisfaction scores are the highest they've ever been." Miguel wasn't exaggerating. Under Marcus Mitchell's ownership, Ocean View Grand had become a model for inclusive hospitality. The mandatory sensitivity training had been just the beginning. Every policy had been reviewed and rewritten to ensure clarity and fairness. A guest advocate position had been created to handle complaints immediately and transparently. Most importantly, the entire culture had shifted from one of exclusivity to one of excellence through inclusion. "Have you heard anything about Derek?" Zara asked, though she wasn't sure why she cared about the answer. Miguel's expression grew serious. "Actually, yes. Word gets around in the hospitality industry. He tried to get hired at several other resorts in South Florida, but your father's legal team had documented everything so thoroughly that he couldn't hide his history. Last I heard, he was working at a small motel near the airport." The irony wasn't lost on Zara. Derek Williams, who had wielded his authority to exclude others from spaces of luxury and comfort, now found himself excluded from the very industry where he'd once thrived. "Ms. Mitchell," Miguel continued, "I wanted to let you know that we've established the Zara Mitchell Guest Dignity Fund." "What?" "Your father approved it last month. It's a fund that provides free weekend stays for healthcare workers, teachers, and first responders who might not otherwise be able to afford a place like this. We've already hosted 30 families. Zara felt tears welling up in her eyes. Her father hadn't mentioned this initiative, but it was so perfectly him, turning a moment of injustice into an opportunity to create more joy and inclusion. That's incredible, Miguel. The first family we hosted was a nurse from Jacksonville and her 3 kids. She cried when she saw the suite, said she'd never stayed anywhere so beautiful, reminded me a lot of why we do this work. As Miguel excused himself to help other guests, Zara reflected on how profoundly that weekend had changed not just her life, but the lives of countless people who would never know her name. The ripple effects of standing up to discrimination had extended far beyond her personal experience. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "Check your email. There's something I want you to see." Curious, Zara opened her email to find a message from someone named Dr. Keisha Washington at Emory University. The subject line read, "Case Study Request, Ocean View Grand Transformation." The email explained that Dr. Washington was a professor of organizational psychology who specialized in studying rapid cultural change in corporate environments. She had been following the Ocean View Grand story and wanted to interview Zara and Marcus about their experience for a Harvard Business Review article about combating workplace discrimination. "Your family's response to discrimination has become a case study in effective corporate activism," Dr. Washington had written. We're seeing other business leaders adopt similar strategies when faced with systemic bias in companies they acquire or invest in. Zara called her father immediately. "Did you see Dr. Washington's email?" Marcus asked before she could speak. "I did. Dad, are people really using what you did here as a model?" "Apparently so. I've gotten calls from 3 other business leaders in the past month asking for advice on how to handle discrimination in companies they're considering acquiring. It turns out that documentation, swift action, and genuine cultural change aren't just morally right, they're financially smart." "How so?" "Think about it, sweetheart. When we bought Ocean View Grand, it was losing money partly because of its reputation for discriminatory treatment. Guest reviews were terrible, occupancy was down, and they were facing potential lawsuits. Now, 6 months later, we're booked solid, reviews are stellar, and the property value has increased by 30%. So doing the right thing was also good business? The best business. Turns out that when you create an environment where everyone feels welcome and respected, people want to spend their money there. Revolutionary concept, right?" Marcus's tone was joking, but Zara could hear the underlying seriousness. Her father had proven that combating discrimination wasn't just a moral imperative, it was a competitive advantage. "There's something else," Marcus continued. "I've been approached by a consortium of minority business owners who want to partner with Mitchell Holdings on acquiring other hospitality properties with similar issues. We're looking at a hotel chain in Texas that's been struggling with discrimination complaints. You're expanding this model? Why not? If we can turn around problem properties while creating more inclusive environments, it's a win for everyone: guests, employees, investors, and communities." That evening, Zara attended a staff appreciation dinner that had become a monthly tradition under the new ownership. The resort's ballroom was filled with employees from every department, from housekeeping to management, all celebrating another month of record-breaking guest satisfaction scores. Carmen, the hostess who had first told Zara about Derek's pattern of behavior, approached her table. "Zara, I wanted to thank you personally," Carmen said. "I know this might sound dramatic, but you changed my life." "How do you mean?" "Before your father bought this place, I was afraid to speak up when I saw discrimination happening. I needed this job, and Derek made it clear that employees who caused trouble wouldn't last long here. But seeing what happened after you stood up to him, it gave me courage." Carmen explained that she had since been promoted to assistant guest relations manager and was enrolled in a hospitality management program that Mitchell Holdings was sponsoring for employees. "I'm not the only one," Carmen continued. "Maria from the spa is studying for her massage therapy certification. 3 of the housekeeping staff are taking English classes. Your father created a tuition assistance program for anyone who wants to advance their skills." These individual success stories represented something larger: a complete transformation of workplace culture from one of fear and hierarchy to one of growth and opportunity. As the evening wound down, Zara found herself back on the rooftop pool deck, now beautifully lit with underwater lighting and elegant lanterns. The space where she had once been humiliated had become a symbol of positive change. Her father had flown down from Atlanta to attend the staff dinner, and he joined her by the pool's edge. "Any regrets about how we handled all this?" he asked. Zara considered the question seriously. "None. But I do wonder sometimes what would have happened if I had just accepted Derek's discrimination and moved to the other pool. You would have been safe in the moment, but nothing would have changed. Derek would still be here, still targeting other guests. The resort would still be struggling with its reputation. And you would have learned that your comfort is worth less than avoiding confrontation." "When you put it that way." "Sweetheart, what you experienced was wrong, and it required a proportional response. Some people might think buying an entire resort was excessive, but consider the outcome. How many families have enjoyed this place in the past 6 months who would have been made to feel unwelcome under the old management?" Marcus gestured toward the pool area, where a few late-evening guests were still enjoying the facilities. A mixed-race couple sharing a quiet dinner by the water, an elderly black woman reading peacefully in a lounge chair, and a group of young Latina professionals celebrating someone's birthday. "Every single person here tonight feels welcome and respected. That's worth any amount of money. What about Derek? Do you ever think about him?" Marcus's expression grew thoughtful. "I think Derek Williams got exactly what he deserved, the natural consequences of his choices. He spent years using his position to make people feel small and unwelcome. Now he understands what it feels like to be excluded from the spaces where he once held power. But people can change, can't they?" "Absolutely." And if Derek ever demonstrates genuine remorse and commits to doing better, I hope someone gives him that chance. But accountability had to come first. As they prepared to leave the pool deck, Zara noticed a new plaque that had been installed near the entrance. It read, "Ocean View Grand Resort is committed to providing exceptional hospitality to all guests, regardless of race, religion, nationality, or background. We believe that diversity strengthens our community and that every person deserves to be treated with dignity and respect." "When did you install that?" she asked. "Last week. I wanted something permanent to remind future staff and guests about our values." 6 months later, the Harvard Business Review published Dr. Washington's article titled, "The Mitchell Method: How One Family Turned Discrimination into Competitive Advantage." The piece became one of the most shared business articles of the year, inspiring other leaders to take decisive action against bias in their organizations. Zara kept a framed copy of the article in her apartment in Atlanta, not out of vanity, but as a reminder of what was possible when people refused to accept injustice as inevitable. The Ocean View Grand Resort continued to thrive under Mitchell Holdings' ownership. Derek Williams never reapplied for a position in luxury hospitality, eventually finding work in a completely different industry. Miguel was promoted again, becoming the resort's youngest-ever general manager. Carmen completed her degree and opened her own boutique hotel in Orlando, using the principles she'd learned about inclusive hospitality. And Zara? She returned to her work as a pediatric nurse, but with a deeper understanding of her own power to create change. She also accepted a position on the board of the Zara Mitchell Guest Dignity Fund, helping to expand the program to other properties across the country. The weekend that began with discrimination and humiliation had transformed into something much larger, a blueprint for turning injustice into opportunity, fear into courage, and exclusion into celebration of human dignity. Years later, when people asked Zara about that weekend at Ocean View Grand, she would tell them that sometimes the most important battles aren't planned. Sometimes they find you when you're just trying to read a book by a pool. And sometimes, if you're fortunate enough to have people who believe in your worth, those battles can change not just your life, but the lives of countless others who come after you. The rooftop infinity pool still sparkled under the Miami sun, but now it sparkled for everyone. 5 years after that transformative weekend, Zara Mitchell Chen stood before a packed auditorium at the annual Hospitality Leadership Conference in Las Vegas. The name change reflected her recent marriage to Dr. David Chen, a fellow healthcare professional who shared her passion for social justice. But today, she wasn't here as a nurse or a newlywed. She was here as the keynote speaker, addressing an audience of hotel executives, resort owners, and hospitality professionals from around the world. "When I first walked into that Miami resort," she began, her voice steady and confident, "I never imagined that a simple desire to read by a pool would spark a movement that would reshape how our industry thinks about inclusion." The audience was captivated. In the 5 years since the Ocean View Grand Transformation, the Mitchell Method had been implemented at over 200 hospitality properties across 4 continents. What had started as one father's response to his daughter's mistreatment had evolved into a comprehensive framework for creating truly inclusive environments in the service industry. Zara continued, "But this story isn't really about my father's business acumen or even about one discriminatory employee. It's about recognizing that every guest interaction is an opportunity to either affirm someone's dignity or diminish it." In the audience, she spotted familiar faces. Miguel, now running his own hospitality consulting firm specializing in inclusive management practices, sat in the front row. Carmen had flown in from Orlando, where her boutique hotel had become a model for small businesses wanting to implement inclusive policies. Even Dr. Washington was there, working on a follow-up study about the long-term impacts of rapid cultural transformation in service industries. What Zara didn't mention in her speech was the personal cost of becoming a symbol of change. The story had garnered international attention, making her a reluctant celebrity in hospitality circles. She'd received thousands of messages from people sharing their own experiences with discrimination, each one a reminder that her story wasn't unique. It had simply been uniquely addressed. The ripple effects extended far beyond the hospitality industry. Business schools now taught case studies based on her father's acquisition strategy. Corporate diversity officers cited the Ocean View Grand Transformation as proof that inclusion initiatives could deliver measurable financial returns. Most importantly, countless service workers had found the courage to report discriminatory behavior, knowing that their concerns would be taken seriously. As her presentation concluded, a young woman in the audience raised her hand during the Q&A session. Ms. Mitchell-Chen, what would you say to someone who experiences discrimination but doesn't have the resources or connections to fight back the way your family did? Quote. The question pierced straight to the heart of something that had troubled Zara for years. Not everyone had a billionaire father who could buy a resort to prove a point. The privilege inherent in her story wasn't lost on her. That's exactly why we established the National Hospitality Advocacy Network, Zara replied, because justice shouldn't depend on how much money your family has. The network provides free legal support, documentation assistance, and advocacy for service industry workers and guests who experience discrimination. The network, funded through the profits from Mitchell Holdings' hospitality acquisitions, had already handled over 3,000 cases. They'd helped secure settlements for wrongfully terminated employees, supported guests who faced discrimination at hotels and restaurants, and provided training for managers wanting to create more inclusive environments. After her presentation, Zara walked through the conference exhibition hall, observing booth after booth dedicated to diversity training, inclusive design, and cultural competency programs. An entire industry had emerged around the principles that her father had implemented at Ocean View Grand. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came when she encountered a booth run by the Derek Williams Foundation for Workplace Accountability. She stopped in surprise, reading the mission statement. Supporting individuals who have perpetuated workplace discrimination in their journey toward genuine understanding and positive change. Behind the booth stood Derek Williams himself, though he looked dramatically different from the man who had confronted her at the pool 5 years earlier. His hair had gone completely gray, and there was a humility in his posture that hadn't existed before. Ms. Mitchell, he said quietly when he noticed her approach. I wasn't sure you'd stop by. I'm surprised to see you here, Zara replied honestly. I've spent the last 5 years trying to understand how I became the person I was. Therapy, education, volunteering with civil rights organizations. I realized that just disappearing wasn't enough. I needed to actively work to repair the harm I'd caused. Derek explained that his foundation worked with other individuals who had been terminated for discriminatory behavior, helping them undergo genuine rehabilitation rather than simply moving to new positions where they might repeat their mistakes. I can never undo what I did to you and to so many others, he continued, but I can try to prevent other people from following the same destructive path I did. Zara studied his face, looking for signs of the arrogance and entitlement that had characterized their previous encounters. She found none. What you're doing now, does it feel meaningful to you? She asked. It's the first time in my adult life that I feel like I'm contributing something positive to the world. I destroyed people's dignity for years. If I can help even one person avoid making those same choices, maybe some good can come from my failures. Their conversation was brief, but it represented something significant. The story that had begun with clear villains and heroes had evolved into something more complex, a recognition that people could change, that accountability didn't preclude redemption, and that sometimes the most powerful advocates for justice were those who had previously perpetuated injustice. As Zara left Las Vegas and returned to her life in Atlanta, she reflected on how profoundly that weekend at Ocean View Grand had changed not just her trajectory, but the trajectories of thousands of others. The rooftop infinity pool that had once been a symbol of exclusion had become a beacon for the possibility of transformation. The hospitality industry would never be the same, and neither would she. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.